Hi, in this video, we are going to cover the subject matter of Simpson's paradox. A Simpson's paradox occurs whenever conditional proportions of two categorical variables yield opposing contradictory results whenever they are grouped or bundled by a third categorization versus when they are detailed or broken down by a third categorization that is used as a conditional factor. So a Simpson's paradox is a contradiction that, if not careful, can lead to what we call aggregation bias. So let me start first by introducing a particular situation where we are going to be looking at Google, and we're going to be searching for Simpson's paradox. It's also known as the Yule-Simpson effect. And there are several websites where you observe Simpson's paradox explained in different situations. The situations that I'm going to begin with is going to have to do with a gender bias case from the early 1970s, from roughly 50 years ago, in which the University of California was sued for gender bias in admissions. The claim was that the percentage of admissions of males to graduate programs was 44%, while the percentage of admissions of women was 35%. And that gap in admissions was used as the cause for the original lawsuit. As the lawsuit progressed, what the university's argument is that graduate admissions are not just one process, but rather a department by department process. So the Department of Civil Engineering will be doing admissions for masters and PhDs in civil engineering. The Department of English Literature will be doing graduate admissions for English literature by department. And the university presented this data for these 6 departments here. And as you can see, in many cases, admission rates for women were way higher than the of men, like in Group A, and in Group B, and in Group D, and in Group F, while admissions for men were higher in other departments, like E and C. So in effect, when you just broke down on a department by department basis the admissions process, you notice that there was a greater variation where sometimes the admissions rates were very, very similar. They were close, statistically speaking. They're pretty much indistinguishable. And in other cases, the admission of women was at much higher rates based on the number of applicants. So this is what we call an example of a Simpson's paradox, where a confusion occurs when you try to group together all departments into one single basket. You get a result that is not necessarily universally true across each and every department in the detail of the data, and thus a Simpson's paradox. There's also an example of Simpson's paradox when we visit your textbook. So right now we're going to go to Pearson, My Lab and Mastering. And I got a couple of emails from folks who were having trouble because Pearson was kicking people back to Canvas. And so on that matter, if you click on this yellow button and Pearson kicks you back as opposed to opening like it seems to be doing for me, you should completely close your browser and do the cleanup of your history and of your cache, not of your passwords, but of your history and your cache. And then in addition to that, you may opt to then make sure you can allow pop-ups, allow ads, allow third-party cookies, allow plugins, and allow JavaScript. And in some cases, in some browsers, allow Flash Player. So once the Pearson page opens, I'm going to go to Course Tools, Document Sharing, and within Document Sharing, I'm going to go to the Exam 1 module, Documents. And specifically, you will see that there is a Simpsons Paradox explanation file, a PowerPoint slideshow. So you can download it yourself. I'm going to put this under Module 2 for this particular video in Canvas as well, straight into Canvas. For now, I'm going to open it and show you another example of Simpsons Paradox. And then after that, we're going to go into Quiz 2 and look for a particular example of computations where Simpsons Paradox occurs. But first, let's go into the PowerPoint slideshow for Simpsons Paradox. So you'll see that the textbook definition of Simpsons Paradox is presented. It's a little bit of a weak definition. It's also it could be still confusing, but essentially I prefer this definition, that when you combine categories that have very different frequency values across different groupings, when you aggregate the percentages, ignoring this categorization that has very different frequency counts, can result in contradictory percentages from the ones that were in the detailed version of events. So the textbook at the end of chapter 2 presents the case of two salespeople, Peter and Katrina. Peter argues that he's a better salesperson because he closes more total sales than Katrina, 83%, compared with Katrina's 78%. The textbook introduces this particular table that you currently are looking at in the below here. And so Peter is examining the overall frequency of closing deals, and he closes 100 deals out of 120, whereas Katrina only closes 94 out of 120. So overall, Peter seems to be a better closer. Now, if you actually look at the closing rate on a product by product basis, you see the contradiction there. When you look at printer paper sales, Katrina closes 95% of her deals, which is better than Peter's 90. And when you look at USB flash drive sales, Katrina closes 3/4 of the sales, which is more than half, which is Peter's closing rate. So in effect, Katrina is better at selling printer paper. Katrina is better at flash drive sales. But when you look at the overall sales rate, Peter looks better. And that can't be the case. That contradiction is what we refer to as a paradox. In this case, the Yule-Simpson's paradox or Yule-Simpson effect. So why do these paradoxes happen? Again, they happen because if we look carefully at the data, Peter focuses most of his client attention on paper sales. He sees 100 clients for paper sales, whereas Katrina only sees 20. On the other hand, Katrina's focus is on USB flash drive sales, much more so than Peter. So you can see that the frequency of attention that each salesperson pays to a different product is very different. In fact, it's opposing, it's symmetrically opposite. Now here comes the key part. Paper sales are easier to close than flash drive sales. And so what ends up happening when you group printer and flash drive sales together is that the printer paper percentage of closings influences the overall percentage higher than the flash drive sales, brings it down, causing Katrina to look worse overall than Peter, and causing Peter to look like he is the better closer of sales. And so there's the root of Simpson's paradox. The root of Simpson's paradox is that when you take a categorization and you ignore it and you group everything under the other factors in your analysis or the other factors in your data, be careful that you don't have these mixtures of very different frequency counts across categories that have very different proportions on the variables that you are choosing to not group or ignore, because you will end up with a Simpson's paradox and you will end up with a wrong conclusion about the association or relationship that categorical variables have. So next, now that we have looked at this PowerPoint slideshow, we're going to go back to Pearson, to the assignments. And in the assignments, I'm going to open Chapter 2 quiz. In particular, I'm going to be looking at, I believe in my quiz, it's question 15. In this particular question, a company uses two different shipping services, Company A and Company B. Imagine a company that uses UPS and FedEx, for example. And imagine that both of those shipping companies offer regular service and also offer rush overnight service. Well, if you keep the regular services and the overnight services as distinct, as separate items, you will notice that Company A is having late deliveries more often than Company B regularly, as well as overnight. But if you lump together and if you ignore regular versus overnight and you just lump those two services into how many total late packages you see between Company A and Company B, what you'll notice is that the overall rate of Company A is 4% of packages, because the 28 packages that you see here in Company A being late, out of the 700 total packages delivered, results in a 4% late rate, or percentage of late deliveries equal to 4%. Whereas for Company B, you have a total of 30 late deliveries out of 700, and 30 is more than 28. 30 is 4.3% at the time. However, when you look at the individual, the regular and the overnight rates here, 500, that is divided into 16, will give you a total of 8% late deliveries. And 8% is very different than the 1.5% of late deliveries. The 1.5% of late deliveries here. So 1.5% is smaller, therefore Company B delivers fewer packages late on a regular basis. In the overnight case, the overnight delivery rate of Company A is 12 out of 200, that is 6%. Whereas the overnight delivery, late delivery for Company B is 27 out of 500, which is actually 5.4%. And 5.4% is less than 6%. So again, Company B turns out to have lower rates of deliveries in both categories. Company B is better at delivering regular packages as well as overnight packages. But when you lump the two data values together, because their frequencies are so different, a reversal occurs at the overall rate, creating a Simpsons paradox. I hope this video has been useful at reviewing and understanding what a Simpsons paradox is and how to check for it. And we'll be providing more videos starting chapter 3 now, module for chapter 3 in the coming hours. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions about it, make sure you either email me or send me a Zoom, visit me during my Zoom Confer hours. I will send you a link for that shortly as well. Take care.